the planets where people actually come together, so like Coruscant or Navarro, planets that aren't delegated for one particular industry, must just have so much trade going on, or you're like expected to like bring all your supplies in with you if you have a weird diet, I guess. Like, don't travel without like 10 dinner packs in your
Right. Hey guys, before the episode starts, I'd like to give a quick thanks to all my supporters. It's greatly appreciated that anyone who listens to this podcast supports it. It's very nice to know that people are willing to help out with this and that they see it to be something worth investing in. Right now, it's just faith. Thank you again, whoever you are. For donating to this podcast. It's by no means an obligation, so anyone listening to this, don't feel like you need to give me any kind of financial support for this. Any is appreciated, but again, I'm not going to ask that of you guys. I don't like to ask you guys to pay for a product like this. It's just something that I like to do for fun, so yeah, definitely not required, but greatly appreciated when it is. I also like to thank our sponsor for today's episode, Anchor. There will be an ad for that halfway through, but again, just thank all of you for so much for tuning in every episode and just giving your undivided attention and support, and it means so much to me. So thank all of you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to Talk Ag to Me, the podcast dedicated to improving ag literacy around the globe. I'm your host, Brandon Black, and today's episode is going to be a bit of a different one. Now, in previous episodes, we've talked about some non-agricultural topics, to say in the least, and how they relate to agriculture, video games, movies, that kind of stuff. Well, today we're going to dive way head in and talk about all things Star Wars and agriculture. And to help me discuss this topic, I have my guest here, Natasha. Now I'm going to let her introduce herself. Natasha, why don't you tell our guests or our audience all about yourself?
Hi there, my name is Natasha Purdom. I'm a pharmaceutical industry professional and a new voiceover actress. I am a giant Star Wars freak. Used to be more on the Star Trek camp, but recently Star Wars has kind of taken over my life. So this is right up my alley.
Awesome. Well, yeah, no, I can definitely relate there. I haven't gotten into Star Trek yet. That's one of the mean to watch for a while now. But no, I've been a diehard Star Wars fan.
There's a lot of content to get through.
Oh yeah, no, that's what I've heard. It's like I don't even know if I want to start because I won't ever finish. But no, for sure. I've been a Star Wars, a diehard Star Wars fan since I was a little kid. My dad used to watch it, so I used to watch it with him all the time. Every kid grew up with lightsabers and all that kind of stuff. So it was like definitely. It wasn't until I got older that I got really, really, really into it, like all the lore and all the EU and all that kind of stuff. But the movies I loved since I was little, and so now I've got my girlfriend into it and all this kind of stuff. I actually have my Lego Boba Fett on my desk.
I love that.
It's so cool.
Matches my shoes.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, so as as some of our listeners may know, I've discussed Star Wars on this podcast a couple times, just very, very briefly. But one of my favorite conversations I've had on the podcast so far was actually I think it was my third episode of season 2. It was my second interview with our good old friend Patrick. And he asked me what I thought the best Star Wars droid would be as a farming robot, because we were talking about ag technology. And that one question has sparked so many conversations that I've had with people all across the different Star Wars communities, different ag communities, and where those communities tend to overlap, which isn't a very large margin, but it's there somewhat. But no, I've been incredibly interested in that idea ever since, bringing agriculture and Star Wars together. And I reached out into a Star Wars Facebook group, and I had a significant amount more responses than I was expecting. And Natasha was one of the most avid people on there, responding and having some great things to say. So I'm very excited for this conversation. So before we get into things, I have to ask my essential question, as always. Natasha, what experience, if any, do you have with the agricultural industry?
So I don't know a lot about it. I do try to shop local. I have a lot of, farm land where I am. I'm on 6 acres, and there's a lot of like small local farms near me. Personally, I grow a handful of things, but I just, dabble on small scale residential style. So most of what I know about agriculture came from your podcast episodes that I've listened to.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad they're working.
For sure.
Well, yeah, that's great. And as you know, I try to bring on people on here who don't have quite as much experience because they always bring a different perspective to the issues, and I think that's always a good thing. But no, I think that's great that you do some gardening. I saw on your post that you have your own little gardens in the back, which is awesome. I always support localized agriculture, even if it's not on a commercial scale. You could just grow them for some tomatoes for your salads. That's still agriculture. So yeah, no, I think that's awesome. So diving into the topic, though, you seemed pretty excited to talk about this. I obviously we've talked about agricultural use for farming droids. What other agricultural references does Star Wars make that possibly I haven't touched on, or that maybe our audience isn't as familiar with? I know that your shirt is already a reference to some things agricultural.
Well, I keep
And
thinking about this shirt because the moisture farming is this
Mhm.
big thing in Star Wars. And if you're, an actual fan, you understand the concept. But I think if my parents have seen all the movies, but I think if I mentioned moisture farming to them, they'd have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that like that's such a dominant industry in Star Wars, and like maybe where we're trending towards if we one day end up, in a different environment 1,000 years in the future. And
Mhm.
it could be practicable.
Mhm.
But that's something that's kind of interesting that they don't. I haven't read any books that really dive into it, but it's always kind of just like, oh, they're a moisture farmer.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I've actually gotten that question before because I've talked to somebody about this before. I don't remember if it was on an episode or not. I think we were just talking, and they said, what is moisture farming? I really didn't have an answer for them. I know that it's farming moisture, obviously, like you're pulling as much moisture out of the ground as possible. But like they live on a desert planet. What exactly is it used for? I don't know if you know, or if that's kind of just I know, like you said, there's not a whole lot of books or anything on it, so it's kind of just
Yeah.
I don't
So I
know.
kind of think of it as like a giant dehumidifier, and then they like the water they're dumping out of the dehumidifier is like their water source.
Hmm.
Like that's kind of how I picture it in my
That
mind.
would make sense, huh?
But like
That's
I guess
interesting.
if they're in an area that doesn't have a lot of bodies of drinkable potable water,
Hmm.
then all their tiniest droplets that they're getting that are coalescing is their best source of water.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I'd never really. I mean, you always hear about Luke was a moisture farmer. He came from a family of moisture farmers.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's always kind of like one off line. But like when you actually start to think about it, like that also goes back, and this is a bit of a tangent, but it also goes back to the level of detail that's put into these movies. Like, there's so many just aspects to the universe that we still don't understand. I mean, like, there's jobs that were like, why do they need that job? Why is that
Right.
important? When in reality, that could be like the most important job on their planet. Like maybe moisture farmers run Tatooine because there's no moisture there. I don't know, but like
Yeah. But
it,
if you
it,
think of
it's
it,
insane.
the
Sorry, go ahead.
topography of the areas that have moisture farmers. So like in The Mandalorian, Queel is a moisture farmer. And he
Oh, that's
again is
right.
in this like very arid place. I don't think they show any sort of body of water at any point
Mm-mm.
in the episodes where they're there. And again, like so desert planet, gotta farm your moisture. It's the
Yeah.
only way you're gonna get it. So I think I was listening to the episode you had about Mars
Mm.
that was talking about the book and the movie The Martian, and thinking about, so in the Star Wars world, maybe they have taken these planets that don't really have viable sources of water and wouldn't be habitable otherwise, and like the moisture farming literally makes like life on that planet
Hmm.
possible.
That's an interesting theory because obviously here we've had issues inhabiting other planets from both a technological perspective, but also a sustainability perspective. I mean, just to take Mars for example, we've seen indications that there's some water on Mars, but we've had very very little luck being able to actually grow anything productive on Mars using Martian soil. They're having the same issue with the moon right now. They're trying to find ways to grow food on the moon that's just not working because moon dust is terrible for growing crops. But like yeah, maybe that's the ticket to it. Maybe it's just a some level of technological advancement. Maybe it's moisture farming. Maybe it's there's something else that we're missing that in the Star Wars universe they figured out. Like this planet is completely inhabitable unless you use this machine that can turn the smallest amount of moisture into a lake, and then you can farm there. And
Right.
maybe that's it. I don't know. That's interesting though. That I completely forgot about Queel. Like I was completely thinking like, okay, yeah,
Don't
Luke is
forget about Queel, come on.
which is so sad because he's like my favorite character in The Mandalorian. I love Queel. Um, we're not going to talk about the last episode, but
Oh. I have a robot vacuum named IG-11, and my
oh.
3-year-old talks about him all the time. So he'll just like tell a story and like throw IG-11 into it because he loves the robot vacuum, and it just like brings me so much joy every time he says IG-11.
That's awesome. So actually, that brings me to another question, which is again a bit of a tangent from the original conversation, but as you'll learn, that's kind of how I
Love tangents.
operate. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Out of all of the droids that we're aware of in the Star Wars universe, which one do you think would make the best farming robot?
So I did think about this a lot, and I kind of set myself up for this response. So if you were farming in the Star Wars world, I love the idea of a droid of destruction turned into a protocol droid,
So
for
like
instance, IG-11, because not only can he supervise all of the operations, but he can protect from wildlife, predators, enemies, everything, and he can like do the whole thing. In terms of like actual, crop harvesting and that type of thing, I don't know enough about like the really techie droids to get into that. But if we're talking like, again, managerial level, I remember someone made the comment that C-3PO was way too whiny, which I agree with. I think a assassin or bounty droid turned protocol droid could be very useful.
I think that'd be really cool to see. And as we've seen from The Mandalorian, it is possible to reprogram them for other uses and still be protective. IG-11's obviously a nursing droid now, or was. But
he probably had experience farming because he did work on a moisture farm.
Right. Yeah. And we actually saw in the montage of him reprogramming him that he had to learn how to, use his hands to be more delicate when moving water from one location to another. And, so that level of reprogramming, maybe it would take time, but it could actually result in a more useful companion for that kind of operation. I know in my episode, we talked about C-3PO a little bit, and that was not the ideal choice. And I actually mentioned that I think that he would be good for a managerial position because he's very good at kind of coordinating things. He's very smart and all that kind of stuff. But and actually, as my guest brought up, he can speak every language, which is incredibly useful. He could translate to different workers. That's often a barrier we see in agriculture, is the language. But overall, I just don't think that he's cut out for farm work.
Oh my gosh, he'd be so stressed. If he got dirty, he would freak out.
Oh, he would lose his mind. He would step into the field and immediately go home because he just couldn't handle it. Like,
that's kind of like a show I'd like to watch, though.
I would love to see
C-3PO trying to farm.
I just want to see them take every Star Wars character and stick them on a farm and see what happens.
Yes,
it's gonna be hilarious.
The fan film we have to make.
Yes. Oh man, that'd be so good. There we go. We'll just animate it. You'll be the voice actor for it, and then it'll be great. And but no, when we had the conversation, I actually had brought up R2-D2, and not because I'm basic and I think R2-D2 is the best droid, but because we've seen throughout every movie, throughout every TV show, R2-D2 is so versatile in every single situation he's put in, and he's one of the smartest droids out there. His AI is so advanced, and I think part of that is because he never gets his memory wiped, which helps, but
it's true. He's
also just he's seen so much that he knows how to adapt quickly to things, and he can plug into everything. He's in. so I was talking to my dad about it, because my dad, like I said, he's a Star Wars fan too, and I asked him, and he was like, well, wouldn't R2-D2's tires just get stuck in the mud? And I was like, well, yeah, but he could plug into a tractor and then pull something through
he would adapt.
Mud. Yeah, he could. He's got those little rockets on him. He can fly through and spray a field. There's so much he could do. He could pick fruit. And when we were doing the episode where we actually talked about this the first time, I mentioned that the robots we use in agriculture today aren't like WALL-E. They're not just driving out there and picking fruit and put them in a bucket. And my guest was like, "Oh, if they're not WALL-E, then I'm not interested." But we talked about how if that were to be the case, what would we want to see? And I personally would want to see an R2-D2 style robot, like an astromech kind of design that could plug into a bunch of different applications, because then you pay for one robot. You don't have to pay for all these machines and program all of them to do their task. You should have one robot that can plug into all of them to do that task, and it'd probably save you a lot of money.
And R2-D2 would come up with a better way to do everything.
Oh, absolutely.
He would just optimize it it's his job.
Yep, and C-3PO would be yelling at him the whole time for not doing it right, and it'd be fantastic. My dad actually brought up a decent point, which was I always forget what his number is. The droid from Rogue One. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. I
Can't
don't
remember
know
what his
why I
number
can't
is.
think of it either.
But yeah, the super sassy one that's just insanely tall. Um,
Yes.
he brought up that he'd be really, really good. Like if you just needed a fruit picking droid, that he'd be perfect because he could reach all the different branches. And obviously, like he's made of metal, so he's not going to get hurt. So he could stick his arm through the trees where there's all the spikes and everything and not get hurt.
Yes.
He'd be ideal for field work.
K2SO, by the way.
Oh, there we go. Yes, that's it.
Drives me crazy. Yes, but also whiny, a little bit whiny.
Yes, I can
What
see
is that with
him.
droids and being whiny?
I don't get it. Droids complain more than the humans do, and they're
Really do.
not like they're not organic.
It's so weird. And even like, the bad guy droids are like going into battle, like, what? Like,
Right.
there's so many of them, and they're just like freaking out. Like, how are you not programmed to be calm?
Yeah,
But
no,
it's
I
one
I
of the
don't
most
I
like
fully
endearing things I think about Star Wars is even the characters that are like completely made of metal are made to be relatable and all have their own
Oh
personalities.
yeah, no, absolutely. That's I talk about that all the time with my girlfriend. How funny it is that the droids are more human than the humans are. Like, and all the I obviously like the Jedi are trained to be calm under stressful situations. The droids are literally programmed for that though, and they can't even like. It's not even that they're trained. They are not supposed to be able to feel anything else, but just their job, and they're still freaking out. It's just I don't know if you've seen Rebels, but I always think of
Yes,
Chopper.
I'm like almost through the first season. I'm getting there.
Oh, I
I'll,
saw
I'll
your
have it
post
done
that
by
you started it.
Mandalorian season 2.
Yeah, no, I love Rebels. I gets a lot of hate, but I love that show so much. But I always think of Chopper, and he's one of the sassiest robots out there. And he's just I still I'm a diehard R2 fan, so I'm not gonna say that he's better than R2, but he's on R2's level of sassiness, but also intelligence, where he's just quickly adaptable. But he's also kind of like he complains more than C3PO, which is not a good combination.
So much. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, he's awesome. I've been enjoying the new characters in Rebels. It took a little bit getting used to being like this entire blank slate of new characters because going into Clone Wars was like, okay, well, Ahsoka's like really the only person I have to get used to, and she's
Right.
awesome. But
Hmm.
Rebels is like, oh, okay, these people.
Yeah, Rebels is literally everyone is new.
But I'm waiting to see some familiar faces. Very excited for any scene that has Ahsoka in it.
They're coming. There's a few familiar faces. There, yeah. No, I was really excited because I heard that she was. I actually before I even started watching Clone Wars, I had seen clips of Rebels, and I was like, okay, so I know Ahsoka's in it, and I watched Clone Wars, and I was like, oh, I get to see Ahsoka again, sweet. And then I went and saw Rebels, and I was super excited. But I actually watched Rebels before season 7 of Clone Wars came out, so I was already exposed to what was going to happen at the end of Clone Wars, and
You
so
ready?
it was intense to say the least. That's the thing too, is like, yes, I knew it was going to happen, but I still wasn't ready for it.
I watched Clone Wars like fairly late. I finished it like a week ago, but I started it, I don't know, in the middle of the summer. And I'm in all these Star Wars groups, as you know,
Hmm.
so everything was spoiled for me. And I
Oh yeah.
still, again, same thing, was not prepared at all. I'm just like
Hmm.
glued to the screen, like, no, no, not Ahsoka.
Even when you know who's gonna live and who's not, you're still just like, don't do it, don't do it,
Yeah,
Rex, no.
yeah. I mean, that's still like 13-year-old me watching the prequels, being like, there's no way this little boy's gonna be bad. Like, there's no way.
Right, yeah, you literally know who Darth Vader is, and you're like, that's not Darth Vader, he's
No,
he's a good
no.
guy.
And then he becomes an angsty teen, and you're like, well, I could kind of see it now.
Yeah, and then you watch Clone Wars and you're like, oh boy, it's coming, isn't it?
Clone Wars is definitely my favorite
Oh
Anakin.
yes, by far. And I've made the argument forever that Hayden Christensen isn't a bad Anakin. He just wasn't written right. Because if you
Yeah,
see the bloopers, he acts like Anakin does in Clone Wars. Like he's a
that's really funny.
perfect
I'll have to check
Anakin.
that out.
It's so funny. Like if you just watch like Star Wars prequels bloopers, he's just like super goofy and he's cocky all the time and he's hilarious. He's not
I need
awkward
more of
and
that.
weird.
Have you ever seen the fan edits of the prequels?
I don't think so, no.
So my husband's boss told him that someone went in and edited out all the quote unquote bad parts. So I guess there's like 5 minutes of content left for 1 and 2. But in theory, they edited out like all of the long drawn out like love scenes and all the
Mm,
crap that like you cannot handle. And I really
mm.
want to watch it. Now that I finished Clone Wars, I want to rewatch, but I want to watch those versions.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's supposed to be getting me a link in the next week. So
Oh
I'm
yeah,
very
no, my girlfriend just
excited.
texted me. She just finished season 6, so once she's done with season 7, we're rewatching Revenge of the Sith like immediately.
Yes, that must happen.
Yeah, but anyways, back to the ag stuff since we're getting off
It's
topic.
okay.
It
Sidetracks are fun.
it happens so easily for Star Wars fans. So yeah, so we were talking about the technology involved in agriculture on Earth. So obviously, in agriculture, as you've learned from my episodes, and as I've talked about many times, we use robotics, we use artificial intelligence, we use a lot of new processes that are typically not thought of being used in agriculture, like drones and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that some of the Star Wars technology that we've seen in the movies or the shows or whatever, that besides the droids, but other technology, do you think that any of that could be used for agriculture today?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the technology, just, all the scanners and stuff they have, like they could
Mm,
just come out here and like analyze the soil and be like, oh, you're nitrogen deficient. Like, and I
hmm.
mean, we have ways to test that, but it's not as like precise as they have in the show.
Right.
I think a lot of their like scanning capabilities, jumping off of using drones, like they could have a drone fly over and not only like show you a visual picture of it, but they could like drill down and show you like every detail of the
Hmm.
topography and the soil composition and probably what needs water and what doesn't. And yeah, the Star Wars world could do some great things for agriculture
Oh yeah.
probably.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. And like you mentioned, we do have ways of scanning for insect life, for moisture level, for nutritional level, but it's a very new technology. It's actually part of a new branch of agriculture called precision agriculture,
Okay.
and it's based off of the idea of using drones, using some of those types of technologies to scan for that kind of stuff. But like we talked about, it's not nearly as precise as it looks in Star Wars, because they could literally, like, the Empire has probe droids specifically for sensing heat signatures of where rebels could be.
Yes.
Like, if you send a probe droid into a field, could you imagine, like, they're like, okay, there's bugs over here, and we could spray over there, or the probe droid itself could just go over and shock them all to death. Like, you know
Yes.
having that level of built-in precision for the probe droid to just like go up and down the rows instead of having one drone fly over and possibly miss stuff, I think that'd be really, really cool to
So
see.
true. And like what you said really quickly about like, oh, there's bugs over there. So I'm reading a Republic Commando book right now, which is
Hmm.
Legends. So, however people feel about non-canon.
Right.
But in the story, they're developing bio warfare that will attack only clones.
Huh.
And just again, the level of precision with like the bio warfare that they have, pesticides, like you could just,
Right.
just target one particular pest and not harm the environment because it's just
Right.
like targeted for that one thing. It would be so awesome because I would kill to get all these little gnats off my kale.
No, that'd be huge if we were able to design pesticides so specific that they could just, like, if we could like understand the insects so well, like they understand the clones so well, and just say like, okay, this thing is only going to kill this insect, and so you could just like send it out, and like you said, like that way it doesn't harm the plant, doesn't harm the soil, doesn't harm the environment, doesn't harm the atmosphere around it. It's just that insect. That'd be perfect, and
So
farmers would
awesome.
love that. You know,
Kill all the insects and then clone all the bees.
there you
And
go.
we're
Perfect. That's how you
good.
save agriculture.
Yes, that's my Star Wars agriculture plan.
No, yeah, we definitely need a clone army of bees. I'm 100% on board with that one.
I
So,
want bees so bad. I have worms right now to tide me over because I don't have the time for bees, but it's in
mhm.
the 5-year plan.
Oh yeah, no, bees are a lot of fun. I personally haven't handled them, but I have friends who have small farms that they use bees, and bees are infinitely useful for farms. They're so nice.
Amazing.
But anyways, so I've heard about. I'm not sure if you were the one that told me this or if it was someone else on the page. I don't remember now. But I've heard about other agricultural planets in the Star Wars universe. Like, they're planets actually designed for agricultural purposes. I wasn't sure if you knew about any of those.
No,
Okay, it might have been somebody else,
probably in
because
some of
somebody
the
else
books I
mentioned.
haven't gotten to yet.
Okay, yeah,
So
because I
like the
haven't.
entire planet is like one big greenhouse.
Yes, like, yeah, they have certain
Cool.
planets that are just farming planets. And what kind of came to mind for me was, in the Mandalorian, what episode is that? I think it's the first episode he works with the former shock trooper, and they go to like that little village. I think,
Oh yeah, yeah, where they're farming the like little blue guys.
yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's one of those planets or not, but that's kind of what came to mind when they mentioned it.
Yeah, because that's all anyone did there that we
Hmm.
saw. And like it was so valuable that like other people wanted to steal it. That's
Right.
really interesting. And
Yeah.
they did not need to do moisture farming there because that was a very wet
Right.
planet.
No, exactly. Yeah, it was all swampy over there. But yeah, no, if we had, let's just say that, somewhere down the line, if we develop our technology enough where we can go inhabit other planets, do you think we're going to sanction off, like, this planet's for tech development, this planet is for agriculture, this planet is for, this thing?
That's such an interesting question. I mean, with the way that we destroy planets, I would think we would need to be like, okay, this one we're not going to mess up. All right. This is our veggie's planet. Like,
Right.
I think it makes sense. Absolutely. Because then you can kind of, depending on what sort of like atmospheric controls and stuff you have, you can basically make the whole planet like a giant bubble. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think that would be very interesting. Difficult to
Yeah.
scale for sure. Maybe start with like moons before we get
Right.
to like full scale planets.
Well, that's the thing that always cracked me up was like people talk about, and it's discussed in Star Wars, like, oh, this is the mining planet. Like, you have an entire planet for mining. Like, you know how big a planet is? Like, their planets like the size of our like states. Like, they're not very big planets. Like,
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
but they have moons too. They have the moon planet of Endor. How big is Endor compared to Tatooine? Like, I want to know the scales of these planets.
Yeah, I wonder if there's information out there on that because we see like one shot and we're like, okay, so is the whole planet that topography or are we
Right.
seeing that portion of it? Because, it's thought of like, all of Endor is just like this forest. Is that
Right.
true?
Well,
Like,
yeah, that's always the thing I'm confused about because like if the planet is that small, then really like there has to be a ton of planets for them to have that many different sceneries, and there is a ton of planets as we know, but like because they describe the planet based off of what that planet is used for.
right.
That's the agricultural planet, and Coruscant is the politics planet, and they all have like their intended purpose. It's kind of just agreed that all of Coruscant is New York City. I think that it's
Yes.
just
Because you've
like
got the high rises, which are the upper levels, and you've got like the lower level.
right. Right, no, exactly. I think that we've kind of just established that all the planets are just like very, very small and they just have one climate forever and they have one type of industry forever. I just want to know like how that because we see shots of planets and they're massive. So like how are they just making an entire planet intended for one purpose?
It's so because you like Navarro is a bounty hunter planet. How do you have a whole planet just for like bounty hunters to hang out? Like,
Right. Like the entire
I'm
planet's just
definitely if we do a part two of this episode, I'm gonna come in with some knowledge.
okay.
I'll do
I'm
my
ready for it. Yes.
research.
No, if if we can find some information on that, I am down for a part two because I want to know.
It's really interesting. Giving me a lot to Google when we're
Mhm.
done.
So that kind of leads me to another conversation. So we see a lot of different types of foods and drinks available throughout the Star Wars universe. I don't know of any specific examples of food. I mean, obviously we see like Baby Yoda eat frogs, but that's a different
Gosh.
situation.
And bone
But
broth.
right, but like we see, I mean, we see Yoda make his soup, which I'm assuming he makes somewhere on Dagobah. I don't know what he makes it out of. Um, what kind of crops do you think I'm assuming they don't have the same kind of crops that we have. Like what kind of crops do you think that they grow? Like what kind of food do you think that they're making?
That's interesting because you don't see them eating very many vegetables because I'm going through like foods and stuff. There's blue milk, obviously.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's like the Ray had that like puffy bread, which was
Hmm.
cool. That must have comes from some magical grain somewhere. But I it seems like it would be more grain heavy and not so much vegetable heavy. Like I've seen like breads and stuff, and I think
Hmm.
the occasional fruit in Clone Wars. I feel like I remember Anakin eating something apple-ish,
Hmm.
but I don't really recall seeing much in the way of vegetables.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
feel
you're
like
right.
maybe it's
That's weird.
more like grain based. Maybe they really don't have the food pyramid down in the Star Wars world.
Well, I also have to, I'm sure that they have to account for how many different species are they dealing with that have so different digestive systems. Like I can't imagine they're all eating the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that, and this is one thing that's always confused me. Like, are all humans the same? Like, are Coruscant humans the same as Mandalorian humans? Like, what uh,
No
are they?
one's the same as Mandalorian humans, but
Right, but like because obviously we have like Plo Koon species versus like Kit Fisto species versus
yeah,
the Dathomirians. Obviously, they're gonna have different digestive systems because they're different types of beings. Kit Fisto is more of like an aquatic species, whereas Plo Koon is fit for a different environment. Like he has to wear that mask just because he can't breathe oxygen. So like
right, right.
how does that affect their diets? And also, like, how are all these planets able to feed that many different types of populations?
Yeah, I'm always really curious about that as well because like in coming from the Star Trek world, you
Mm,
have these machines, basically like a 3D printer for food, and you can synthesize anything you want. But
mm,
Star Wars doesn't have that wonderful technology.
right.
So I think just like the planets where people actually come together, so like Coruscant or Navarro, planets that aren't delegated for one particular industry, must just have so much trade going on, or you're like expected to like bring all your supplies in with you if you have a weird diet, I guess. Like don't travel without like 10 dinner packs in your ship.
Right. Yeah, Plo Koon just has to have a lunch pail with him everywhere he goes.
Yeah. Bring the lunchbox around. Like I know like a lot of times they'll have like ration bars, so I guess you could travel with like a lot of those if that's something that you can consume for your species. But even like how they consume food, and like we don't see a lot of people consuming food in ways other than eating, but like some people might not have mouths on their face.
Right.
Like
Yeah. Like we talked about Plo Koon, where is that mask? Like, how does he
yeah.
eat without, like, does he have like a chamber he can go to where he can breathe so he can eat? Or like, I'm not sure how they,
Thing is Mando, he can't eat in front of anybody, so he
right.
probably has a chamber too.
Yeah. If he's camping, does he just have to like wait until he has a chance to go to the bathroom so he can scarf down a breadstick real quick? Like,
Move it to the side and just like real quick.
he's
Yeah,
just,
there's definitely not enough food scenes for how long we spend in cantinas and bars.
mm-hmm.
There's not enough actual consumption of food. I'm gonna be
Right.
like keeping an eye out though now.
So this is the thing that always cracks me up. Every time I have somebody on this podcast and talk to them about this kind of stuff, they're always like texting me like right after episodes, like, I just watched this movie and now I can't unsee it. Like,
It's literally gonna be me. Like, be prepared. Like as I'm watching Rebels, I'm gonna be looking for all these things.
oh, I'm ready for it. I always look forward to those texts. Like I had one person, I was on his podcast and we were talking about agriculture in, I can't remember what movie it was now. I think it was Wall-E, maybe. I don't remember now. We were talking about some movie and we were talking about video games and we were talking about, comic books, all this kind of stuff. And he like 3 days later texted me. He's like, dude, I can't believe it. I was watching this movie and I didn't even realize like there's actual farming, there's farming in that movie. And I was like, yeah, it's in like every movie. Nobody realizes.
There is farming in movies.
Yeah, agriculture is like all over the place. People just don't realize it. And it cracks me up whenever I like open that up to people and they believe me finally. They're like, oh, I didn't realize like how much it is in everywhere. And I was like, yeah, food's kind of an important thing.
Yeah. Well, even like again, looking at like the Mandalorian, like we have the moisture farmer, we have the
Hmm.
people in the little land getting the fish from the water, and like that was
Hmm.
like a big deal and a big part of the episode. Out of just 8 episodes, we had like 2 or 3 big scenes that like focused on farming.
Right. Yeah. And that's a big distinction too, is that, farming is not just food related. It's obviously it's resource related in all ways. Here on Earth, we consider agriculture a branch term to talk about the production of food, production of fiber for clothing, even like lumber. So how we get our wood is considered agriculture. Mining, all of those things are considered agriculture. So when you take that, when you take that level of definition into it, think about how many mining planets there are, how many lumber
Oh
planets there are,
my
how many
gosh.
fishing
That's a
planets.
whole other podcast.
Right. Like, if you think about the galaxy as a whole, just as far as we know, because there are other systems in the galaxy that we don't see, obviously. But like, imagine if they started a lumber operation on Endor, or
Gosh.
like,
That'd be so
like
sad though.
that would be sad. I don't want to see the Ewoks at their
Don't
home
suggest
taken
that to
over.
anyone.
But like you have like
I've
all the
ever
mining
seen them, like,
operations.
I don't know that I've ever seen them like fell a tree. Like I'm
I
trying to
don't either. I Well, obviously you see the Ewoks use logs for for
yeah.
traps and stuff like that, but you never actually see them cut one down.
I think like Ewoks notwithstanding because they're a more primitive society, but I think like in the upper societies of Star Wars, they're probably using more advanced materials. Like I
Yeah,
don't really think they have a lot that's like made of wood.
that's true. You don't see very many wooden houses in the Star Wars
Metal.
world. Yeah, that's true. You do see in the newer trilogy that I can't remember what the planet's called now. At the end of Force Awakens, where Rey and Kylo Ren are fighting in that forest, they do cut down some trees by accident because they're neither one of them can fight.
Yes.
And they're just like randomly swinging at each other, and a bunch of trees keep falling down. But
Hopefully someone came by and did something with those trees.
right, yeah, they didn't just sit there and wait to catch on fire or something. But I mean, it's an ice planet, so I can't imagine they were catching on fire too often. But But no, so it's like I was always curious about that because my mind never stops thinking about agriculture because of the podcast. I would watch that and be like, huh. So they have a fishing planet, they have a agriculture planet for just row crop farming, they have moisture farming, they have obviously they have to produce clothes somehow, and everyone wears different clothes. So I don't know how they do that. I know some of the clothes are made out of metal and stuff like that because they have like armor, but like the Jedi robes don't just show up; they have to be made somewhere.
Wait.
So they had to have some kind of planet where they produce either wool or cotton or something, some kind of similar synthetic material, maybe. I don't know. But when you think about that, like, and plus you have the spice trades, because spice is like some super valuable resource in the galaxy for some reason. That whole
Have you
trade
read it all
system.
about?
Oop. Oh, you cut out for a second.
Oh, sorry.
You're good. What were you
Yep.
saying?
Uh, I said, have you read it all about spice?
The only thing I know about spice is from the Clone Wars and Rebels. I don't know much about the spice trade besides that.
I just like Googled it the other day because I'm like, why does everyone care about spice? And it
Mhm.
sounds like it's basically like LSD.
That's kind of what
So
it seems like.
another
It's
kind of like high
yeah.
value, crazy, trippy drug.
Hmm.
Okay, that adds up.
Right.
Get that being valuable.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. But they obviously have to farm that somewhere, unless spice is just a name for it and it's a synthetic material. But it seems like it's farmed.
Yeah, like it's always in mines. So
Right.
very curious, but they don't show it. It's like in a crate, but they don't
Right.
open the crate. Like
Yeah.
not spices.
No, it's yeah, it's
Although
definitely not
those have to
paprika.
come from somewhere too. Wonder how they make that distinction if you want spice on your food.
Right. Yeah. Maybe they have a different word for it. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think that they're using paprika for high dollar trades. But no, so like stuff like that is obviously a big. I mean, it's a hot commodity, so they probably have specific plans that are built around that. I mean, the entire war was supposedly waged off of the Trade Federation not holding up their end of the bargain on a lot of different commodities. So like agriculture in all forms is obviously a big deal in the galaxy far away. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's always been kind of funny to me how many different types of connections you can make to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really interesting. It like actually structures a lot of the story. I mean, like,
Hmm.
Luke growing up as a moisture farmer is like an important part of his identity.
Hmm.
Like
Yep. Yep. No, we see it all over the place. I mean, always obviously like the desert planet motif is a thing that has to be used for every hero ever for some
Yep.
reason. But we see it from mostly from Clone Wars and Rebels. They get really into it, but the movies we see a lot too. I mean, Naboo has like the aquatic species of the Gungans. They live in like a swamp area, but there's still fishing that's going on Naboo. Like you see
Yeah.
the fishing quarries or not quarries, reefs and some of the some of the shots of the early movies and stuff like that. And so like there's so many different connections to agriculture, but and not that I expect everyone to be like, oh yeah, there's farms in Star Wars, because that's kind of not the point of Star Wars. There's a lot of other stuff going on. But I just think it's cool to point that stuff out and show people like, hey, look what's going on behind the scenes. Like there's other stuff here besides just flying spacemen that are throwing swords at each other.
It's nice that they fleshed it out and made it a realistic world,
Hmm.
because if they didn't have all that, there would be people like you to question it and say, hold on, how is this society even being held together?
Yep. No, and I do for a lot of movies. I'll question like, okay, well, where's their food coming from? Where is their clothing coming from? Like, how are they sustaining themselves? Because you see a lot of like dystopian society based movies, like Hunger Games and stuff like that. And obviously, in Hunger Games, they have a farming district, but like, you see a lot of those like movies and books and stuff like that. And they just talk about how beautiful the cities are and how they're like utopian, like castles and all this kind of stuff. And I'm always thinking, how do they get there? Like, because it's kind of agreed upon at this point from a philosophical point of view, but also from a historical point of view, that all civilizations have to start from agriculture, because if you don't have food, you obviously can't build a city. and
Sure.
and so in the ancient civilizations, when agriculture first started, the civilizations weren't built until they realized they could farm, because they were hunters and gatherers. And once they figured out they could farm, they had to build protection. So they built houses. And so that was kind of the first civilization. I actually just recorded an episode that's coming out in a couple weeks now that is talking about Johnny Appleseed and how he was a real guy and how he used to plant orchards everywhere he went, because he didn't like living in civilization. So he just planted orchards and just kind of wandered. everywhere he planted an orchard, a city just popped out of nowhere. Like he basically founded
Food,
cities
we
with his
should build
apples.
here.
And so like when you take like Star Wars into consideration, we have all these incredibly advanced civilized planets. I'm sure they all had to start off somewhere. I can't imagine they were all farming planets because not all of them are like obviously you're not going to farm on Hoth. Like that's just not going to
Yeah.
happen. But I can imagine. By the way, what's Hoth used for besides ice?
I think just ice.
Because I know it's a rebel base, but like, is it used for anything productive? I think it's just a Wampa farm.
Yeah, I think it's like intentionally chosen as like a pretty desolate just
That's
ice.
fair. Yeah, that way they could hide from the Empire. That would make sense.
Yeah,
But
like don't want to choose anywhere that people want to go on vacation.
right, yeah, they're not gonna hide out in Naboo and hope that nobody finds them.
Yeah,
Although that probably would have been a good place because I guarantee Darth Vader wouldn't go back to Naboo.
true.
But yeah, so I always wonder that it's like, I know that there's some planets that have to be dedicated to that kind of stuff, and there's some planets that obviously can't grow anything, but like how did they get into that? Because obviously space travel wasn't something that they had for forever. They had to
Right.
develop at some point. So how did those planets survive for so long? Or did they were they just inhabited after those planets were able to transport over there?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I'm thinking like the very opening scene in like The Mandalorian is like another ice planet and it's got all these like horrible creatures that can
Mm,
come out of the ice and kill you.
yep.
So maybe they're ice fishing or something. Like
Yeah.
somehow they're sustaining themselves, or like you said, maybe it was habited later on and
Mhm.
they brought all the resources with them, which is pretty feasible because if you think about it, like the odds of every Star Wars planet having been habited from like the get-go are pretty
Mhm.
slim. You would think that they started off with a few and then branched out.
Yeah, no, I'd be very curious, and I'm sure that George Lucas has an answer for it because he has an answer for everything. Apparently, he's like,
True.
"Oh yeah, no, there's only one planet originally, and then they started going to all the other ones. Like
That's
all
wild.
all the aliens are actually just humans that mutated. Just something." Like he would just be like, I mean, like you said, is that canon? Well, it is now. Like just
Now I made it canon.
that's just what he does. But no, I always thought that was kind of interesting. And actually, I just had a question. I forgot what it was. Um, oh, I remember what it was now. So, okay, yeah. So this is a little bit of a strange question, but it follows the same format as the farming robot one. Out of all of the, because we see a lot of animals in Star Wars. We see the Tauntauns, we see the Wampas. Some of them are more monstrous, like we see the Mudhorn in the Mandalorian. We see the three beasts in the Battle of Geonosis in Attack of the Clones. Out of all of the animals that we see, the weird cow things that Luke milks in his little desolate planet, which one would you want to eat?
Honestly, I think a Wookiee would be pretty delicious. That's not an animal, but I don't know. Like furry things tend to have some good meat under there, and then you could like make a nice cloak too. Is that horrible? Chewbacca fans, please don't kill me.
See, I want to disagree with you because I love Chewbacca, but really I don't disagree with you because
You could see like a bison kind of like if a bison stood up, it would sort of
yeah,
look a little bit like Chewbacca.
I always thought they were more dog-like, like maybe they're kind of lean. But if you get a pretty fat Wookiee, you might have
Yeah,
a pretty good
I'll
feast.
plump him up. I
Yeah.
wonder what a blurg would taste like. It would probably be super tough.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
What's your animal that you're nomming on?
I hadn't thought about it before asking that, and I probably should have had a question ready. I would want to, as bad as we've learned that they smell, I would want to try a tauntaun. I don't know why. They just sound. It looks like a
Who
sheep.
knows?
It
You
looks
have
like
to
a
put a lot of
sheep.
spice on that.
Yes, that's what you have to put spice on. Whatever the word for spice is, that's not the
Yes.
drug.
Seasonings.
Yes. I don't know. I would want to try the cow things that Luke milks because those look nice and fast. I'm sure they taste pretty good.
Yeah. Oh,
Um.
an Ewok would be so tender, I bet. Like
Oh
especially
yeah.
horrible.
What if?
Now
Do
the
you think?
vegans and the Wookiee fans will hate me.
Do you think that they have Do you think they have like gummy Ewoks? Do they have like gummy bears?
If they don't, they should. I'm sure
Honestly,
Galaxy's Edge has
I'm
them.
surprised. I was gonna say, I'm surprised Disneyland hasn't started marketing those yet. That should be a thing.
Ewoks. Oh man, I would eat those every day.
No, I think that if I were to try, I'm thinking about it because I think that a bantha would be kind of tough. But I would like to
Yeah.
try a bantha. Um, the thing that comes to mind for me. So I don't know how you feel about the Last Jedi. I'm personally not a fan of it, but I do love with all of my heart the porgs. And my girlfriend gets so mad at me because she's like, they're not useful for anything. They're just cute. And I was like, I know, but I love them.
But, I mean, we have plenty of animals that aren't useful, but they're cute and we love
Yes,
them. Like,
exactly. And
don't have
and
to be useful.
and I was like, he's completely useful. He is Chewbacca's support animal. That is all he needs to be there for.
Yes. I would love one of those. I would not eat a pork.
I'm conflicted because they're too cute to eat, but I bet they taste like chicken. And I guarantee Luke has eaten at least one. And I
Yeah,
want to know. I want to know what they taste like. But
so many Star Wars animals to eat. Now I'm getting hungry for
I am
really
too.
random food.
That's probably not a good question to ask, because I haven't eaten all day, so now I want.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. So but yeah, no, that was something that came to mind. So now I have these ideas for merch I want to do for my podcast, and now the gummy Ewoks are definitely part of that.
Yes.
Um, but I had so I'm gonna run these ideas by you, and anyone listening to this, don't steal my ideas, even though I haven't patented them at all.
We will hunt you down. I'm listening.
I will send a bounty hunter from the planet of bounty hunters. I had this idea so going back to the robot conversation. I want to see a tractor. So again, there's a t-shirt idea. I want to see a tractor that has a slot in the front of it, like on the nose of the tractor, just has a slot for an astromech, and you just have R2D2 sitting in it, driving the tractor.
Yes, that's cool. I will totally buy that shirt. I want to be your first customer.
Like there's nobody in the cab. It's just the tractor and like the nose, and then R2D2 just sitting in the front. And then I want to see him like driving through a field, and like off to the corner, you see like C-3PO with his hands on his head because he's always stressed out.
I literally can picture this very clearly. Please make this. Nobody rip this off.
I want to make that shirt so badly because I think it'd be hilarious.
You got to do it. You got to do it. I don't think it'd be that hard to design.
I don't think so either. I just need to get somebody to actually do it because I have no talent at all when it comes to art. I think that
everyone and their brother has like a home screen printing setup now.
That's
like,
true.
So many people that like do their own like t-shirts and stuff. So
that's true. Yeah, I might have to look into that.
Folks.
Yeah, and then I had another idea for a shirt. This goes back to the Wall-E thing. I don't know why. I just want a T-shirt of an orange tree, and then Wall-E just like picking the orange and like his bucket open. I don't know why that just sounds like such a cool shirt to me. I just because it's like, that's almost like that's the prequel to his movie, like the plant that he saved that entire time grew up into an orange tree, and he's just like picking the orange from it. I think that's just a cool shirt idea.
I like it. I
had another Star Wars one. I don't remember what it was now though. I know that when I brought up the question of like the which droid would be good for a farming robot, somebody said a gonk droid. I don't know why. The trash can with legs.
Are they thinking that the trash can's hollow inside and can pick stuff?
I don't know. He said that he just wants to see a gonk droid pulling a plow, and I was like, I don't think it's going to work very well.
Oh, I guess the assumption is that they're very strong. Maybe
that's what it is. That would make a little bit more sense. Oh, I remember.
Just chain a few Wookiees to the plow, and when they get tired, we'll eat them.
I just love this idea of like Wookiees are not people. They're just they can't speak, so they must not be people.
I can't understand them, so they're not people. I mean, where are the lines drawn? There's like no laws in Star Wars.
This is true. Like what is considered an animal and what's considered a person?
Yeah. So like you can grab a frog and eat it and it's gross, but it's okay. So
right.
Like, what level of, cognition do you need to have to be considered a non-edible being? I don't know. Maybe you could just chomp down on a human and no one would care.
Yeah. And that's the thing I've always wondered too. How does the law system work in Star Wars?
It doesn't at all. Have you seen the movie?
Yeah, no, exactly. There's no level of police at all. The Jedi are the police, and they're terrible at it. Like they break the law more than anybody,
Yep.
and like it's a completely corrupt political system and a government system overall. So there's no level of capital punishment of any kind. For some reason, like I'm very confused on how, like, is it planet by planet? Is it system by system? Because the Mandalorians have laws, and you
Yeah.
can't, like, if you break a law in Mandalore, they kill you. And the planet, you know the arc in Clone Wars where they save that planet, and Saw Gerrera and his sister are like the revolutionaries behind the whole thing.
Yes. It's Onderon, I think.
It is Onderon. You're right. Yeah, because that's where
That one stuck with me because I was like, they couldn't get more creative. That's just Alderaan with one letter change. Come on.
right. Yes. No, I thought the same thing. I was like, Onderon? Really? Like
You pronounce it slightly differently, so it's okay.
yeah, you're grasping at straws here now, guys. But yeah, that's where Lux ended up and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that planet has a similar like judicial system to Mandalore. Like they actually have a police force, and they actually have guards and all that kind of stuff. I'm curious on how that works then, because I don't think Kashyyyk has one. Like the Wookiees don't have any kind of judicial system. I don't like. Do they have a jail on every planet? Do they have a like? I want to know how that works.
I feel like the overarching, what you want to call like federal government of the galaxy, really just controls trade.
That's
And
what
like
it sounds. That's what it seems like.
and then everyone beyond trade, you can do pretty much whatever you want.
Right. It's just the Wild West.
Yeah, and like there's little sects and factions that have their own rules and put bounties on people's heads and stuff like that. But I think the overarching government really just cares that trade happens the way they want it to.
Yeah, well, because I'm always confused because like you always see like somebody in one of the movies or the shows or whatever do something, and like somebody that they're hanging out with is like, oh yeah, don't do that. You'll these guys are gonna come kill us, and there's like, well, how are you supposed to know? Like, is there like you have to know the law?
Get like a transmission to your ship when you land that says like these are the laws, or
right?
Like, cross state lines, and like one state you can text while drive, and the other state you can't. Like you got to make that stuff clear.
Right? Yeah, there needs to be a better communication system of like, hey, if you throw away your garbage on a Tuesday on Mandalore, we'll kill you. And
just like don't do anything wrong on Mandalore. Assume that is always going to happen.
Well, yeah, because if you do something one way, then the Mandalorian government will kill you. If you do something the other way, the Death Watch will kill you. So it doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna die.
It's very true.
No vacation on Mandalore.
No, not at all. Not a fun place.
No, definitely not. So I'd be curious, like, because that reminds me of like regulations and stuff like that. So like for going back to the agricultural thing, like, do they have regulations on anything like that? Like, can they just like grow whatever they want whenever they want? Are there markets involved? Because obviously trade's a thing. So like, how do the markets work? Like,
I would think that like like overarching government, whatever you want to call it, like sets up the basic structure. Like we were talking earlier about planets being designated for different things. I think there's like parameters around what you can do, and there's only certain resources. So like if you wanted to grow tomatoes on Endor, you don't have tomato seeds. Like
right.
What are you gonna do? So I think like resourcing is maybe more of a factor than actual regulations.
That's probably true. Yeah, imagine you're just what if there's just like a really, really like dumb farmer on one of these plants? Like they're just like, you know what? I'm just gonna grow this crop because I don't care what the regulations say. I just want to grow this crop. And it's like it's like we said, like Hoth. Like they just like they want more than anything to be a farmer on this planet, and they're just trying to grow crops that will not grow.
Everything dies.
Because like some smuggler was like, hey, if you grow these seeds, they're worth a lot of money, and they're just like they grow them in Tatooine where nothing grows. Like,
oh my gosh. Yeah, that's another show I would watch.
Yeah.
This like just really defeated farmer just trying over and over.
Well, have you seen?
Right.
Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Yes.
Okay, so you know about Mundungus Fletcher.
Yes.
So I love, because I was listening to a Harry Potter podcast for a little while called Potterless. Great show. In one of the episodes, he's talking about Mundungus Fletcher, and he's just like, I want to see a spin-off series of Mundungus Fletcher just ripping people off on magic items that don't work. And I want to see that for Star Wars. I just want to see some smuggler. I want to see Han Solo do it, honestly. I want to see just some smuggler, like, just going around, just ripping people off, and then just, like that's what I want to see, like, a spin-off series of The Mandalorian. Just, I don't know who or what or how it would be done, but I just think that'd be hilarious.
So Star Wars themed Harry Potter inspired snake oil salesman.
Yes.
That's a long title.
I would watch that, though, in a heartbeat. I'd make an entire podcast just about that show.
You need someone like the Mandalorian, though, who has like this really strong force. Like, you're not going to mess with him. You're obviously always going to buy it from him.
Right. Yes. No, that'd be great. No, I want to see that dynamic. And then I want to see, like, or like I want to see, I think it'd be really funny if somebody like stole the identity of somebody else, like somebody dressed up as Din Djarin, as the Mandalorian, and like tried to go around selling things and like ripping people off, and like the real Mandalorian's like, dude, what the heck? And like they just have like
Once
this whole
again,
fight.
it wasn't me.
No, I just think that'd be, because there's like, for
It would
some
be
reason there's this.
fairly easy to do.
Yeah, no, I don't know why there's this theme of everyone stealing Mandalorian armor, but like everyone's got Mandalorian armor and nobody's a Mandalorian anymore. Like, it's so weird to me. Like, the Fets are not Mandalorians and they have Mandalorian armor. Din Djarin, I guess, was a foundling, so he's okay. But like, there's all these stories about people like stealing Mandalorian armor and just becoming Mandalorians.
Like, I don't get how the Mandalorians haven't just like killed them all. So like, the Fets are really interesting because like, you would think that like the Mandalorians would like despise them, but like I read like mixed things. Like the book that I'm reading right now, they like worship Jango Fett as like a god because he's like the greatest bounty hunter, and I'm like, don't you guys kind of think he's a fraud?
Right.
Like, I feel like it's painted a little, and again, it's not in canon, so maybe that's why it's a little inconsistent, but I keep seeing people talking about this like possible Boba Fett cameo in The Mandalorian, and they're like, oh, maybe we'll find out if he's a real Mandalorian. I'm like, well, he's not, unless they are really rewriting the canon again.
Right. Wouldn't
would
surprise
line
me.
up. But I just like, bringing people back from the dead is awesome, but like, he's dead, like super dead.
Right. Yeah. There's EU stories about him surviving the Sarlacc pit, and I have no idea how that could be possible. Like, it's a Sarlacc pit. Nobody survives that.
Yeah, like we saw what happened. It wasn't like they cut away right before he fell in it. Like,
right. It wasn't like he could have had a chance to shoot it and then like fly away or something. Like, no, we saw him fall into it and get eaten. Like,
maybe Beskar is just like that strong.
He's just been like,
it just spat him right back out.
Right. Or yeah, maybe Beskar just doesn't taste good, and like the Sarlacc's just like, what is this, and just got rid of him. Like, I don't see how they could bring him back. If they do, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see him, but I'd kind of be like, all right.
Well, yeah, it's confirmed that his armor at least is going to be in the show, but there's theories it's going to be an imposter, and I'd almost rather see that just because it would make more sense.
Yes.
As much
I'm
as
fine with the armor. Oh, mining Beskar would be something I'd be interested.
That would be cool, because they don't explain where Beskar comes from. They just say it just is Mandalorian armor.
Yeah, I'm building a Mandalorian kit, a set of armor, if you will, in very early planning stages, and like reading so much about it, and it's like so interesting that it can like draw blaster fire specifically to it, and like what properties in it allow that to happen. Like, I want to know more about this mineral.
Yeah, well, since I started watching The Mandalorian, I started learning more about Beskar. I didn't know hardly anything about it until watching the show. I had friends who were very, very into the Mandalorian lore, and they were telling me all about it for forever, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool. And I watched it, I was like, oh, Beskar is pretty cool. Yeah. And so I would love to see what was the inspiration behind that, because it sounds like why would there not be like massive mining operations to get this stuff? Because obviously it's super rare, obviously it's extremely valuable because it's so impenetrable, and it's so it's so powerful. Where's the trade federation for that kind of stuff? Like, why was that not a more talked about topic? Like, why is nobody hunting down Beskar?
Yes. And like, I don't understand, like, I get that like Mandalorians are strong and powerful and no one wants to mess with them, but how are like some rich folks not just hunting down every Mandalorian that owns any Beskar and stealing it from them? Like, how is that not? I know they're more like in the Mandalorian, they're supposedly like wiped out, but I think we'll find that they aren't, since in theory we're going to meet Bo-Katan and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, I would think they would be completely wiped out because people would just be like, oh, well, you're made of diamonds, so I want
Right.
you.
Yeah, and like that's something that isn't really talked about either. The whole reason behind the Mandalorian purge was not for their Beskar. Like it was all for like because they thought the Mandalorians were too much of a threat, or because of political reasons. Like there was basically every reason but your armor is extremely valuable. They just wanted the Mandalorians dead. Like there was no inspiration behind that was related to their armor, which doesn't make any sense to me because like everyone knows not to mess with the Mandalorians because of their armor and, you know, their fighting styles too. But like throughout the show, everyone sees the Mandalorian. They're like, ooh, that armor. Like,
Yes. Yeah, it's very bizarre that didn't just become, you know, like ivory tusk that was just like hunted to extinction.
yeah, no, exactly. Imagine a tractor made out of Beskar.
That would be so expensive.
Yes, it would.
So heavy. You would have
Tractors
to
are
use all the
expensive.
Beskar.
Right. Well, that's the other thing too. Like, how much Beskar is there? Like, are they out of it and they just have to find whatever tablets are left, or is there still a mine for it? You know.
They've got to be out of it.
I would think so. I don't know. Well,
Because
I
like,
guess
so Din Djarin, his bounty is like a kilo of Beskar
right.
maybe, and like that's his suit was probably, I don't know, like $5 million. Like
Yeah.
in
No,
real
his suit's
world,
like
like at
insanely
least
expensive.
$5 billion. Like I'm
Right. Like,
so put a price on it.
I mean, like the fact that, but also I'm kind of confused on how the payment system works, because like they offered him Beskar to hunt down this seemingly helpless, you know, child. I mean, I get that it's force sensitive and they're all scared of Jedi, but he went and got this thing like it was nothing. Like there was no challenge in him getting the baby. Like why did they give him this extremely valuable material instead of just hoarding it for themselves?
Right. Well, and you would think that for the price they gave him, they could have hired what, like 1,000 droids or 1,000 soldiers to just go and storm the place instead of sending one freaking bounty hunter at a time.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
come on, that's not an efficient use of resources. And then like they gave him the brick as a down payment, which like I could never get over. I
No.
tried to count. I think he got like 20 when he was paid. So they gave him like a 20th of this like $1 billion payout up front. Like what?
Right. Like that's why I'm so confused, because they talk about how valuable it is and obviously it's extremely useful, and they just give it to him like it's nothing. They're like, "Hey, here's some Beskar." Like, "Oh, you know that extremely rare mineral?" Like it's like that's like paying a Jedi in kyber crystals. That's like
Yes. And like what are the odds like that they just happen to have Beskar? Like now that I'm really like thinking about it, like,
right.
oh, could you imagine a payment in kyber crystal?
That's another thing too. How do they do kyber crystal farming? Because
I don't think yeah, you probably need Jedis,
well, I
right?
would think so, but we know that the Death Star is powered by kyber crystals, and
Yeah.
that Palpatine farmed Ilum to get as many kyber crystals as possible. But we learn in Clone Wars you can only get kyber crystals if it's presented to you. You don't just get to go get them.
You would think that he would have to have sent a Sith to get them.
So maybe Vader
Or
has enough light side in him to activate the kyber crystals again. I don't know.
maybe he used a Jedi, like I'm thinking someone like Barris or something, like
Oh,
he
could
was
have
able
been.
to work with prior to Order 66, or
Yeah,
that he
because we
kept
still don't.
for himself. Like,
Yeah, because we still don't know what happened to Barriss, or at what point she turned. Like that's all still kind of in
yeah.
the dark.
That arc really got me.
Oh man, when I saw Ahsoka fighting her, I was like, "It's Barriss, isn't it?" And I saw
Yeah.
Anakin, I was like, "Oh no." But anyways, well, I think that's a before we get on too many more tangents, I think that's a pretty good stopping point for this conversation.
Yes.
Because Star Wars can go on forever,
Tangents
but
all day.
and while there's a handful of more farm related Star Wars topics we can go into, I think that a lot of it's just gonna be more logistic stuff. I don't know if there's anything else that you had questions about or anything else you wanted to discuss more.
No, I think we covered a lot.
I think
The
so.
one thing I didn't get your thoughts on was the Star Wars technology. Is there a single piece of Star Wars
Oh,
technology that you would like that would
mm,
really make agriculture better, easier?
that's a good question. man, there's just so much technology. It's hard to pick. I actually have a book that's like all of the weapons and technology in Star Wars.
Cool.
It's so cool.
Well, you're gonna have
Um,
to look at it later, and I know you'll be texting me.
oh yeah, no, I'll definitely find it. Let me I mean, off the top of my head, I think that if we're talking like practicality wise, I mean they have like super precise tools. Like these like the medical droids are able to create prosthetics for hands that are like so realistic. I feel like that level of precise medical technology is it's got to be useful for something. I mean,
Yeah.
in whether it be soil science analysis or maybe in genetic modification or in something. I don't know, like maybe that could be a way of preventing us from having to put down animals that break their legs. We can like I don't know. I feel like that's something that could be explored more because we see that in in the Clone Wars arc where they learn about the chip. Like there's that level of detailed medical ability, and not to mention like just the cloning process overall is so precise and so
Right.
effective that like I think that their understanding of the medical industry is something that I think could be really, really useful for a lot of our more like microbial science. So like for soil science, for like I said, genetic modification, for CRISPR kind of technology. I'd like to see that like that kind of level of like biotechnology used more effectively.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Although, if you involve the Kaminoans at some point, our squash are all going to kill us. So,
Yeah, I you can't trust the Kaminoans for anything. Although I would like to see a Kaminoan try to pick some oranges. That'd be kind of cool.
oh, they can reach everything. He's so
Oh
graceful.
yeah, no, although they wouldn't touch it, they couldn't go anywhere near the dirt.
That's true.
They're too clean and like
Yeah,
pure and
we would have to
everything.
outsource that.
Yeah, but it is
This
what
was
it is.
a great conversation. I really enjoyed
Yeah,
this.
no, yeah, I'd be happy to have you on for so some more Star
Awesome.
Wars banter.
Thank
And like I said, my I've got some more research I need to do on some topics. Obviously, you said you have some more research you want to do
Oh
on some
yeah, I'm
topics.
gonna be looking at some planets and some stuff.
Oh yeah, I
We'll come back with
guarantee.
concrete data.
Awesome. Well, I guarantee we're gonna have a lot more to talk about. My girlfriend's about to finish Clone Wars, so I'm already gonna have more to
Yeah,
talk
we're
about.
getting that conversation going when she wraps that up. It's
Yeah, no, for sure.
happening.
I'm very excited, and I can't wait for her to start Rebels. That's gonna be so much fun. I love Rebels, but yeah. So I think that's a good that's a good hour and 10 minutes or whatever it was that we spent. I think that was a good conversation we
That
had.
fast.
So it did. I didn't even realize. I was like, oh, it's already been an hour. I should probably start wrapping up. But
Well, thank you again for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
yeah, thanks for reaching out. I definitely appreciate the the interest and listening to my other episodes and stuff like that. It's always fun getting other perspectives on here and getting more conversations out there. And I always love having these types of episodes because, like I said, a lot of people don't realize just how connected agriculture is to everything that we consume. It's everywhere, and so I think that conversation is really fun to have too. Is not just I'm not just preaching about something that's over in my small hometown. It's also everywhere we look. I mean, food is kind of essential to all that we consume, and so that's kind of why it's important to talk about like agriculture is in all of our movies and all of our TV shows and all of our video games. It's everywhere.
I'm
So
going to be looking out for it now a lot more than I was before. So thank you for that.
oh yeah, no, my pleasure. And like I said, anytime you have more questions about anything, even if it's not Star Wars related, just agriculture related in general, I have an episode for everything. But there's some questions I haven't answered yet that I'm happy to talk about. So
Awesome.
yeah, thanks again for coming on. It was a lot of fun. Thanks to all of our listeners for tuning in. Oh, before I close out, do you have anything you want to plug?
I have a brand new Instagram. So if anyone wants to follow me, accepting any and all follow requests, it's Natasha, Natasha .Purdum, Purdum. You will see cosplays and an increasing amount of Star Wars stuff.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I've enjoyed looking through some of your posts. They've been very
Thank
entertaining.
you.
But yeah, so everyone go check out Natasha. I'm sure she'll be back on for another episode fairly soon because we always have more to talk about. I hope all of you enjoyed the episode. It was definitely a lot of fun, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. Thank you again to our guest and to all of you who are tuning in. And thanks for all the support that you guys give on every episode. Thanks again to Faith for donating to this podcast. A monthly subscription, which again is not necessary or obligatory, but I greatly appreciate it all the same. Thanks again to our sponsor, Anchor, and all that you do in terms of financial investment of this podcast. And yeah, that's all I have for you guys. So I hope to hear from you next week. And don't forget, if you ate today, thank a farmer.